Good evening, St. John's. Just a word of warning that there might be a second story that comes in tonight's meditation that involves a dirty word. So, for sensitive ears, I just give you a heads up. Sometimes, there's just a story that can't be told right if it isn't told right. So, there's my word of warning. But to start with, it has been a crazy 24 hours for my wife, Cynthia. As you know, we're trying to get out of here to leave for a 5-week vacation, and what you might not know is Cynthia has 3 jobs. She's the bookkeeper for a Presbyterian church, an Episcopal church, and the Presbytery of Tacoma, and all out of the comfort of our bedroom, she runs the books for all 3 of these organizations, and there's no one to back her up, so to be leaving for 5 weeks means there's a lot of work that needs to be done to make sure all the bills and payroll and everything and treasurer's reports are all managed on time. And then, last week, she found out that her uncle died, and we talked about it, and she thought she can't miss the funeral. She wasn't super close to the uncle, but she's very close to the son, her cousin. And so she went out. I think I told you this the other day. Well, she was supposed to fly back on Sunday evening out of Atlanta, but the flight was delayed, and the flight was delayed, and then the authorities came on and removed 2 passengers from the plane, and then they were off the plane for a while before they got on rather sheepishly again, and then they sat on the tarmac for a long time, until the point where the entire flight crew had outlasted the hours that they could work, so they had to get off the plane, sit in the airport before they could board the plane again with a new flight crew. And why? Because someone in that sheepish couple had sent a tweet out on the plane. I guess he was a little frustrated or exasperated with something to do with the airline, and he put out some venting tweet that he ought to hijack this plane. Well, guess what? People are watching Twitter, and if you say you're going to hijack a plane, guess what's not going to happen? That plane's not going to take off. So Cynthia spent about 12 hours before that plane could finally be reloaded and come back. She was supposed to get back, I don't know, like midnight or something this morning. She didn't get back till late morning, right before noon. And the last time she'd eaten had been 2 deviled eggs on Sunday afternoon, and the restaurants were all closed in the restaurants, so it was an absolute misery. The one saving grace is that her cousin had flown her out on his frequent flyer miles, and he had gotten her a first-class seat, so at least she could wait with a little space. And the reason I bring this up, just 1, to lament on behalf of my wife, but 2, to recognize it's really a bad idea to tweet that you want to hijack a plane. But the principle beneath it that's not good is keep your garbage to yourself. We don't need to vent every thought we have. Just because something bothers us doesn't mean our neighbor needs to hear about it. Be it a tweet, or someone in church, or your next door neighbor, or someone in your house. I think part of growing up is learning to shut up when the time comes. I could imagine there are any number of things that Jesus was frustrated with. Yet and he didn't say them. He was exasperated sometimes, but spiritual maturity knows when to keep your mouth shut. We might not be able to control all our thoughts, but we can control our tongue. Which brings me to my second story. I used to live in Ireland, and there was one day I was hitchhiking because that's the way you got around. And this old priest picked me up, and I think I might have met him before because I remember him addressing me by name. We're driving along, and you'll forgive my Irish accent, I'll do my best. He said, "Eric, have you ever heard the story of the..." Oh, wait, I'm going to get it wrong right out of the gates. "Have you ever heard the story of the fox and the wren?" I said, "No, Father, I've never heard that story." He says, "Well, you know the wren, the little bird. Well, one day the little wren was out at the pasture, and he was just out hopping along minding his own business, and a cow came along, and he shit on him. And he got stuck in the shit, and he cried out, and the cow, he didn't hear him. But after a while, a little fox came along, and the fox scooped him up, and he took him down into the river, and he washed him off, and then he ate him. And that's the end of the story, Eric. And he said, and this is the moral of the story, that the person who shits on you isn't necessarily your enemy, and the person who helps you out isn't your friend. And then he said, and there's a second moral to the story, Eric. He said, if somebody does shit on you, don't make a lot of noise about it. And I've always loved that story, and the lesson is the same. A lot of times things are a real mess, and we don't need to shout about it and make a lot of noise. Our God knows, and he understands, and his call to us is patience, and a quiet spirit, and forgiveness whenever needed. Let us pray. I prayed, and understanding was given me. I called on God, and the spirit of wisdom came to me. I invite you to be quiet and aware of God's presence around you and within you. I seek your presence, O God, not because I have managed to see clearly or been true in all things this day, not because I have succeeded in loving or in reverencing those around me, but because I want to see with clarity, because I long to be true and desire to love as I have been loved. Renew my inner sight, make fresh my longings to be true, and grant me the grace of loving this night, that I may end the day as I had hoped to live it, that I may end this day restored to my deepest yearnings, that I may end this day as I intend to live tomorrow, as I intend to live tomorrow. Show me wisdom in my inner being. I will show you hidden things that you have not known. For the wisdom that fashioned the universe and can be read in the earth's dark depths and in heaven's infinity of lights, thanks be to you, O God. For the wisdom of teachers before me and their words and imaginative seeing, for the wisdom of those I have known and their silence and humility of speech, and for wisdom's wellspring in my own soul and in the soul of every human being, from which ancient truths and new realizations spring forth, thanks be to you. Let wisdom unfold in my own heart and mind, and in the men and women of every nation. Let us see the foundations for a new harmony within us and between us, the foundations for a recovered unity with the earth and all its creatures. For the ground of life is in you, O God. The ground of all life is in you. I invite you to recall the events of the day and to pray for the life of the world. In the great lights of the night sky and its unbounded stretches of space, I glimpse the shinings of your presence, O God. In the universe of my soul and its boundless depths, I look for emanations of your light. In the silence of sleep and the dreams of the night, I watch for jewels of infinity. In the silence of sleep and the dreams of the night, I watch for the shinings of your presence. Amen. Good night, Gig Harbor.